We are back with another episode of the Gold Standard. Joe Danneman and Charlie Goldsmith, and we're talking Bengals and Reds on this podcast. And we're starting with the Bengals because it's finally game week here for the Cincinnati Bengals. Right before we pressed record, I asked Charlie if he believes the Bengals will win in Cleveland. He said, "You got to wait for my hot take when we start the show." Okay, so that's my first question. What is your hottest take? It can be about either this week in Cleveland or the Bengals season. What's your hottest take on the Bengals?
My hottest take, for the second time in franchise history, the Bengals will score 30-plus points in each of their first two games.
Okay.
The only other time was 2018, and 2018 shouldn't even count because they only made it past 30 in that game because with 30 seconds left, Clayton Fedulum, a safety, returned a fumble to the touchdown. So the offense didn't even score 30 this game. I think they do that. Is there an offense better set up to start the season strong than the Bengals?
I don't think so.
Like, we can pick apart the problems. Burrow, slow start, right guard. Everyone's got problems.
Sure.
I think it'll feel a lot like the Week 4 Panthers game from last season. The defense is going to struggle. I think that's how these first two games are going to feel when you look at the way the Bengals offense can carry them.
Really good comparison of that Panthers game last year. That's when it felt like the season was on the brink for the Bengals last season. We'll talk more about this season and expectations and the idea of a hot start. But I want to ask you about Joe Burrow. So I was not inside the Bengals press conference room when Joe Burrow spoke on Wednesday. I was inside getting interviews for our pregame show on Sunday. You were there when Joe said that the narrative is shifting on the Cincinnati Bengals. What's your read on what Joe meant, and what do you think the national narrative is on the Bengals right now as they begin what feels like a very important season for this franchise?
Well, let's trace the history a little bit. 2021, they were this young little team that was hopefully going to have a good year. That was how they were viewed. They made it to the Super Bowl. Even coming off the Super Bowl, heading into 2022, outside expectations, the national narrative, they were calling it a fluke, all that kind of stuff. The Bengals proved that wrong in 2022 with an even better season. That expectation carried into 23, but the defense performed so poorly in 23 and 24. Now the narrative about the Bengals is it's a team you don't want to face in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. If they get there, I feel pretty strongly that they'll make the postseason, but they're not being grouped right now with the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens.
Doesn't mean anything if you have a great training camp team. That's not what we're paid for, said Joe Burrow. That felt like a tone setter to me. Do you feel like Joe Burrow understands the urgency of getting this team back to the playoffs? Because you mentioned the narrative is dangerous team if they're in the playoffs, but they got to get there first. Do you think Joe and the rest of the team, because of what Joe said and maybe what Zack Taylor has said and what everybody outside of the organization has said, feels the urgency of this year?
Can I tell you something Joe didn't say but he means?
I would love to.
So what I'm hearing, Burrow's really confident.
Yeah.
He's not going to say that. He said all the right things. He was trying to not make headlines yesterday. I understand where he's coming from. I think Burrow's feeling really good. One, about how he's throwing the ball. Two, about the offense that's surrounding him. Three, the continuity from the skill position standpoint. Four, the scheme and the continuity there. And just the answers that he feels like he has. They've accomplished. They had a tremendous training camp aside from a couple moments where the play up front slipped up, which will happen over the course of the season as well. But this is an incredibly confident Burrow, even if it didn't fully show up in some of the quotes on paper.
What's your biggest concern for the Bengals? Maybe not necessarily just week one, but season-long concern for this football team.
I mean, you start with the guard position. You start with the fact that their answers were, one, their number one guard being a third-round pick as a rookie. Usually those guys compete for basically the number two spot, not just get the number one spot unchallenged. It's like Dylan Fairchild was treated like the Joe Burrow of guards. And then Lucas Patrick, just follow the money. He isn't being paid like a starting guard in this league. No one's still giving me a good explanation for why Cody Ford didn't get more of an opportunity to be this team's starting right guard. But part of what Burrow's confidence stems from is, all right, if Cleveland's just beating them up front, they've done this a million times. They know how to flip that switch, adjust, start getting the ball out, start counting on the receivers to win one-on-one very, very quickly. They know how to push those buttons even when they don't have that stellar upfront play. So probably the even bigger concern for me would be safety.
Should Cincinnati be as excited as they are? When I say Cincinnati, I mean Bengals fans on social media about Dalton Risner.
I'm sorry. Sorry to you Bengals fans who are excited about Dalton Risner. So I turned on the film. It was some of the most concerning guard film that I had seen in a while. There were plays where he sets up and he blocks an area.
Yeah.
Guys get around him. When the play moves, he's not great at following that play. He didn't show a lot of lateral range athleticism. I turned it on. Literally the first play just whiffs against Jeffrey Simmons, who's a guy who that style of pass rusher has always been maybe the easiest way to beat Burrow when you have a guy like that. So, and I didn't see any wins. I didn't see any, great job, great anchor, great finish, great hustle. I was very concerned with what I saw on film.
Most likely to surprise for this Bengals team. I'm talking about an individual player, season long. When we're starting game week here at the end of the season, we say, oh, we didn't see that coming from that player. Who do you think that might be?
I'm going to go with Demetrius Knight, because I think Demetrius Knight has kind of been miscast. I think because he looks a lot like Jermaine Pratt, not like his face, but like just the build. You see him out there, a big stocky linebacker who sets the edge, who goes downhill. He's not Jermaine Pratt in that he's very, very comfortable and instinctive, dropping back in coverage. And what they feel like they've seen is a fluid, confident linebacker against the pass, even more than the run so far. I think he'll be more of a splash plays guy. And for a defense that's counting on splash plays, that could go a long way.
Is this a playoff team?
Yes. I think the Ravens set the bar too high in the AFC North for them, but it's still a Bengals team that can go into Baltimore and win. Burrow, Jamar, and T, man. Like, sometimes I just wrote a 2,000-word story on Fox 19 just about that concept, about how Burrow, Jamar, and T are just the answer to every question, every argument. Like, yes, because of that and what that represents and what it means to have T back. You put all that together, and that's a huge part of the Bengals' identity.
I had a one-on-one with Zack Taylor this week leading up to week 1 in Cleveland, and I asked him that exact question. Look, all of Cincinnati who follows this team believes this team is dangerous because of those three. That's what makes you unique. He said the whole idea of the coaching staff when they go to game plan, considering they have these three, is not letting the other team off the hook, making sure they feel that. Every single play, moving those guys around, finding areas for those guys to exploit a defense, but the idea of making sure the other team at all times feels that the Bengals have those big three, to me, I thought was a very interesting answer from Zack Taylor. So you say yes, playoff team. I agree they are a playoff team. What needs to go right for this team not to be just a playoff team, but be a division winner and win the AFC North?
I'm going to take a roundabout answer to this, and we'll start very distantly in the future. If by this point next season, in 2026, the Bengals have gotten 4 contracts done, either extensions or re-signing their own free agents with starters on this defense, this will have been a successful season.
Okay.
Because that means that there are, 1, that many guys they feel like are worth retaining and building around and investing in, and 2, frankly, that the front office has gotten more aggressive in getting these contracts, especially from an extension perspective, done. Kind of the underlying story of the season is that this defense could be completely different next season. When you look at Trey Hendrickson's a free agent, you look at B.J. Hill, his contract has some flexibility. Shamar Stewart will be here, but Joseph Osai is in a contract year. Miles Murphy will be eligible for an extension next year. Logan Wilson will be entering a contract year. Cam Taylor-Britt will be a free agent. Dax Hill will be eligible for a contract. DJ Turner, Jordan Battle eligible for contracts. Geno Stone will be a free agent. This is only a successful season if you're here next September saying, we like those guys and we got them back.
I have said multiple times, I believe, on this show that the Bengals weren't going to rebuild their entire defense in one offseason. We've seen the steps they've taken, mostly through the draft, also a change at defensive coordinator, picking up a free agent or 2. You make such a great point that it might take another offseason of not just adding, but revamping with so many guys that are up for new contracts here in Cincinnati. It's going to be fascinating to see how they play this year. And to your point, if they are re-signing a lot of guys, that means they had a successful year in 2025. Let's talk about Zack Taylor. What would your word be to describe this season for Zack Taylor? It feels like there's pressure, there's urgency. What would the word be for you for Zack Taylor?
I'll go with 2 words, and one isn't a real word. Head coachy. So Zack has proven that he's a very good play caller with Joe Burrow. And I think in 2021, that was one of his biggest strengths, the way that he designed and built, both from like getting Jamar and T to designing game plans, put Burrow in a perfect ecosystem.
Yeah.
Lots changed since then. What this season is about for me is just looking at the Bengals, culture and situational football. That's stuff that Zack has spent a lot of time reflecting on, working through, getting feedback on. Those are areas you can always get better. Those were areas over the last 2 seasons that haven't been good enough. That's the head coachy stuff. It's empowering the new leaders on your defense. It's having the right approach for a specific game situation, having guys who know exactly what they need to be doing and are out there doing it confidently. That comes from the head coach, and that's going to be critical for Zack to do.
2 straight years of not making the playoffs when you have an MVP caliber quarterback. How much pressure is there on Zack Taylor to get this team back to the playoffs?
100%. Now, I think actually the worst thing that could happen for Zack, wouldn't even be an 8-9 season. Because I don't think the offense is going to struggle. I think even worse than that would be the Bengals being, say, 11-6 with the 17-game schedule, or 12-5, but then maybe losing the AFC North, and then multiple games, losing a playoff game because of game management. Okay. If this is a good team, and then they get into a big spot, and then you do what you did against the Ravens in Week 5 last year, run, kick long, field goal, holder, drop, snap, or against the Broncos. And there was bad luck against the Broncos when Chase Brown got hurt. I get that. But giving Denver the ball back with that much time, if you make that level of mistake again on a team that's good, that should be winning, I think that's the worst thing that could happen to Zack.
So the microscope, as you said, is on situational football, situational game managing for Zack Taylor in 2025.
Because if he's losing the Bengals games, that's the season. Now, if he's winning the Bengals games, then the Bengals will be in a great spot.
We will jump back to the Bengals and the Gold Rush. Let's go to the Reds now. Here are the Reds, as of this taping, losing another series, this one to the Toronto Blue Jays. We have the day off before the start of what feels like the Alamo for the Reds, this weekend series against the New York Mets. 4 consecutive series lost, am I correct? Why?
It started because of situational hitting and defense, areas that were supposed to be the strength, the identity, the core of this team, completely fell flat. And it's not like they were even good enough to begin with, but completely fell flat against the Diamondbacks, the Dodgers, the Cardinals. It felt like we saw the same game 3 or 4 times. Then over the last 2 days, you saw the pitching staff just crash. A team meeting on Sunday, I think players-only meeting, worked.
Sure.
It was a looser offense. They were passing the baton. They won on Monday, but then the pitching staff crashed, starting with Lodolo getting sick. But then it just got so exposed how taxed this bullpen has been, and how the middle relief corps just isn't as good as it needs to be for a team with aspirations. That all got exposed with how they lost those games.
If this weekend is the Alamo for the Reds against the New York Mets, is it a must sweep? Look, the numbers will tell you mathematically, of course not. The Reds still have a path, even if they don't sweep the Mets. But emotionally, optically, does it have to be a sweep over New York?
It's the only thing that could have them feeling confident as they go out on a West Coast road trip. A loss in any one of these games would be a tough blow. And you could have a nice little spark. You won the series. But you're not going to really feel good about where you stand unless you go out and sweep the New York Mets.
The home runs question is a question that you dove into with Brian Giesenslaw, Fox 19 alum, on the Power Stacks podcast. And I always like to cross-promote your podcast because you're so good at what you do. What was the conversation about with the home runs? Because Reds fans say, listen, we have this ballpark here in Cincinnati. We have guys that are supposed to hit home runs that aren't hitting home runs. What's going on with the Reds and home runs, and how much of that is a dead anchor on their season?
Well, for 20 years, they chased home runs. Think Adam Dunn. Think building the ballpark for Griffey and Dunn. You look at the 2020 Reds and the way they lost against the Braves in the playoffs. They didn't score a run. I think there was some reflection coming off that, and coming off 20 years of not successful enough baseball, saying, we need something that, 1, we can hang our hat on in a more consistent way, and 2, you have a better chance to execute at an elite level as a small market team, because you're never going to outslug the Yankees. You're just not getting Aaron Judge here. From a development and acquisition standpoint, the Reds put less emphasis on pure power. You add in Terry Francona and Chris Valaika in their approach this year, emphasizing each at-bat as a situation instead of each at-bat as a roll of the dice that you try to maximize, which is what the previous coaching staff did, and you can debate those things. But if it's a spectrum, they've gone so far in the area and approach that goes away from home run hitting. I think it's probably a bit too far as well. Now, part of the reason, too, they're not hitting homers is Ellie's hurt and gassed, Steer's been hurt, Andujar's hurt, Friedel is grinding, McClain just missed a whole season. Like, there are individual reasons why they're not hitting for as much power, but then collectively, I think you're seeing the organizational philosophy leave themselves a little exposed from a power standpoint.
I'm going to ask you a very specific question to scratch my own itch, because when I was watching the game, and this is the game on Wednesday night, a game that if the Reds win, they win a series against the first place Toronto Blue Jays, and you set yourself up for a chance to take a swing at the New York Mets, the Alamo series this coming weekend. So the Reds are down, I'm pulling up the box score right here, the Reds are down 2 runs, I believe, in the 8th inning. And they go with Lyon Richardson and Zulueta instead of trying to turn the faucet off with Tony Santillan and Emilio Pagan like they have all year. Do you agree with that philosophy of saying, oh, because we're losing, we're not going to throw our big guns? And it turns out that the Blue Jays then score 5 more runs and eventually win the game easy.
So the Reds are stuck. They're stuck because Pagan and Santillan have had to pitch, or have been asked. They've been asked to pitch way too much. And while other teams save those cards to play for September, the Reds have burned right through that flexibility. So because of how much Santillan and Pagan have pitched, I wouldn't have pitched them either.
Even with the day off today.
But the problem is that they pitched too much in April, May, June, July. The bill comes due. And the Bills do now, and it's a reflection of how much you asked from them earlier. I think the best comparison I have for it is a Marvin Lewis training camp. Like, it was just so demanding with them, with how much they played guys, even guys battling injuries every single day. I think the team, I don't want to say they're gassed, but they're pretty close. And that's the bullpen, that's the position player guys. Right. And now we're at this point of the year, and you need to give Spencer Steer 2 days off. Yeah. These things could have been prevented more during the summer. And that's where their slow start costs them. That's where their approach on a night-to-night basis catches up to them now. So you're right. Richardson shouldn't be pitching. But the real reason he's pitching was a course you charted back in the summer.
Again, as of this taping, it's the Thursday before they start the series against the Mets. The Reds are 70-70 with 22 games left. Final question on the Reds, and we've done this throughout this podcast. The temperature check. We've been landing somewhere in the mid-80s all season long. What's the ceiling for the Reds and wins this year?
They just showed that their identity isn't clicking right now. And even the rotation that we thought they could hang their hat on, it's just been fine. I'm going to be at 83 right now. It's been a very concerning stretch for what they're trying to be.
So even if the Mets go 11-11, their final 22, and they play 500 baseball, that would mean the Reds would have to get to 86 wins. That's 16-6.
Wow.
The final 22 games. But again, the narrative can change at the Alamo, Great American Ballpark, sweeping the New York Mets this weekend. We'll see. Okay, to finish off the show, we're going to the Gold Rush. These are going to be some rapid-fire questions about the Bengals, some big-picture thoughts on the season. The Gold Rush for Charlie starts with, what is your definition of a fast start for the Bengals?
Not having to ask Burrow a single negative question in the first 2 weeks. I keep going back to this. Burrow's the one who started slow. It hasn't been the defense. The defense has played fine. If Burrow, let's say, completes 70% of his passes in each of the first 2 games, this will be a fast start.
Is 3-0 doable for this team?
I'm worried about the Brian Flores defense, especially for an offensive line that's still gelling. 3-0 is 100% doable.
Those 2 coaches in Minnesota, Flores, Kevin O'Connell, 2 of the best of what they do. That's a talented roster. The question is Joe Burrow enough to tilt the scales against J.J. McCarthy for the Bengals to win Week 3? But, of course, they got to get to Week 3, 2-0 first. Is it crazy to say Chase Brown will score more touchdowns this season than Jamar Chase?
Let's have a philosophical conversation about the Bengals' goal line offensive identity. I'm still going to say they drop back more often and that Jamar is going to be a part of that. They can run the ball more down there because another year of development for Mims, being able to run behind a physical specimen like Dylan Fairchild should help, but I still think they throw the ball more.
Chase Brown last season was only the featured back, I would say, probably 10 or 11 weeks. Scored 11 touchdowns. Yeah. Jamar Chase scored 17 last season. Is this Joe Burrow's MVP year?
I'm going to say no. I don't think they quite win enough games, and I just think that the competition and his peers, and then his peers are playing with worse skill position groups around him. Argue that all day. I think from the voter pool as a whole, that does carry impact.
Does Cam Taylor-Britt earn a second contract in Cincinnati?
He better, because if he doesn't, he still has true Pro Bowl ceiling, and I can only say that about like 3 young guys on the Bengals defense. I'm going to say yes.
What's your line been about Cam Taylor-Britt?
The message, this isn't my line. The message to Cam has been, go make $50 million.
Yeah.
This is it. This is your opportunity.
He's very aware of that. I had a discussion with him this week leading up to the game in Cleveland. He sees the guys around him getting paid. He's not going to get that kind of money. We all get it. But he understands what this season means for the big picture for him. It feels like he's saying all the right things. It feels like the headspace is in the right place. The question is, can he go out there and do it? The Bengals need a playmaker somewhere in their secondary. Do you think he's their most likely playmaker of all the options at corner and at safety?
1,000%. One more thing on Cam. I don't think anyone benefits more from the defensive coordinator change than Cam Taylor-Britt.
Why?
There was always a division between the old guys and the young guys in Lou Anarumo's defense in terms of what they were able to do, kind of not the rules off the field, but like the rules, the way they played, all that kind of stuff. And Cam was kind of stuck in the middle because he felt himself becoming one of the most talented people on that defense, which he was in 2023. But it just never quite clicked, and Lou was always quick to criticize him. I think there might have been, I don't know, it's great for Cam to have a fresh start.
Now we will finish with the gold nugget. This is when we dive into Charlie's notebook for a great story he's working on or a great interview you've done. There's been a lot of people talking on social media about a story you wrote recently about the collaboration that built the Bengals defense. Congratulations on a great story you wrote on that. Can you give us a snippet behind that story if people haven't read it yet on fox19now.com?
It started with one quote from Al Golden. You will see a piece of every single coach on this defense in our defense. That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Because this is a guy who's calling plays in the NFL for the first time, who just had one of the best defenses in college football, could have very much just surrounded himself with coaches he's comfortable with and plopped a playbook on the table. But instead, they had weeks and weeks of real debates. What do we want to be with coaches who come from very, 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 very different backgrounds? And the goal, and frankly, the plan is the Bengals defense, you can't put it in any bucket. It's not like Baltimore. It's not like Pittsburgh. It's the Bengals defense. And I'm excited to see that.
What are you watching closest Sunday in Cleveland?
I'm interested to see how, I'm expecting from a defensive backs perspective, the third down packages to kind of be the Wild West. Play different matchups, different mix-ups, different roles. Drop this guy here and that guy there. Who lines up where? Who's on the field? How much are they subbing? And what does that show about this defense's identity? Okay, the game Sunday is right here on fox19now.com. On Fox 19 Now at 1 o'clock, okay? But that means we will kick off at 9 a.m. with our pregame prowl live in Cleveland. Charlie will be part of that show. Myself, Gabby Sorrentino, Reagan Holgate will be live in Cleveland. Jeremy will be back here. I don't think you're on the big Bengals set, are you, Jeremy, on Sunday morning?
Not allowed.
Not allowed, he said. We'll be somewhere on set here talking about the Bengals. Huge day, season opener, Bengals and Browns. You're on the record. Bengals are scoring more than 30 points in Cleveland. He's shaking his head yes.
I'm in.
He's in. And we're in for a big Bengals Sunday right here on the Bengals flagship station. Thanks for listening to The Gold Standard. We'll see you next week on another episode with Charlie.